Sooner or later it was bound to happen, and today is the day. We're going to use a visual aid, so let's take a look. What do you see? Now, do you think the white triangle is brighter than the surrounding white areas? Well, the reason I'm showing this illusion by an Italian psychologist is to introduce the French opera Debussy's masterwork, Pelléas and Mélisande. Don Feinberg here with another segment of Opera Insight 2023. And the triangle illustrates the Gestalt psychology principle of closure. The thing about that triangle is there's no triangle at all. Just three hungry Pac-Man-like figures facing one another, separated by three sets of lines forming acute angles. Let's have another look. No matter how hard we squint, it's almost impossible to make the triangles go away. Our minds complete the picture. It's how our human psyche navigates the world. I like this illusion because it shows one triangle on top of another triangle that are both illusions and they interact. Our minds combine them to form a six-pointed star. If you like, pause your tape now and get a good look before we go on. Okay, got it? Let's continue. Illusion upon illusion allows us to project a sense of structure and completeness. We don't experience this as a partial picture where we fill in the blanks. Rather, we experience a complete whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. It is precisely in this way that Claude Debussy's opera invites us into the world of Pelléas and Mélisande. This phenomenon explains the paradoxically positive effect that this love story has on us. The music orchestrates scenes in a narrative that take place over the course of many months. Each of the main characters has a history that we in the audience imagine. We fill in the blanks, so to speak. We base these ideas on a combination of what the spectacle of the opera presents to us together with what we bring to the experience. Now, by spectacle, I don't mean huge or grandiose. I mean the seamless combination of the music with the drama, costumes, sets, and projections. And I'm overjoyed that our production this year is brilliantly directed by Nisha Jones. You might note that she also, along with her studio team, simultaneously designed and developed the costumes, sets, and projections. It is the complete work of art, the Gesamtkunstwerk, the term usually associated with Wagner, but it is aptly illustrated by this season's Pelléas and Mélisande. Nisha Jones's coordinated effort provides a coherent and timeless context for our construction of this opera's world. Put in terms of our visual aid, more than most operas, the music, libretto, and stagecraft provide the corners, and we experience the bright white triangle. This opera presents its world as a symbolist drama. It employs evocative music to reflect the more dreamlike truth of each character's inner emotional life. Often, their emotional lives are beyond their conscious awareness. Put another way, we in the audience are bathed in the evocative music and may be more in touch with the characters' inner feelings than the characters themselves. And when this emotional life is in conflict within itself, when the conflict is within a character instead of between different characters, this production has come up with an ingenious solution. A doppelganger on stage, a double that can represent those conflicted feeling states. We in the audience can better imagine what we simultaneously feel from the music. This emotional journey is delineated by context and implication as we see it, as surely as we saw the triangles only a moment ago. We journey into their dark world of foreboding. Now, as a psychiatrist, any world with this dark quality invokes the powerful forces of the unconscious. In this opera, these forces enshroud a tragic love story that, as Nisha Jones succinctly said, it draws us in. With all that said, let's take a look at the narrative of the opera. It provides the hooks on which we hang our emotional reactions. In the first scene of Act 1, we find Prince Golot. He's lost in a dark forest. He's hunting for something he cannot find. It doesn't take but a minute before the external story and his internal confusion merge. He comes upon Mélisande alone and crying by a spring. Her crown has fallen into the water. It is visible and retrievable. He offers his help. Note the music is not heroic or chivalrous, but there is an urgency. What do you think is motivating him? We learn she'd run away. She insists he not touch her, and she insists he leave the crown where it is. And if he picks it up out of the water, Mélisande threatens she will jump in and take its place, and drown herself. She admits she's been hurt, but will give no details. The music reflects his confusion at her conflict about being rescued. Now, you just heard about the introductory scene for one of our title characters. Let's pause a moment. Whether we focus on it or not, our minds begin to fill in the blank of her story. We can't help ourselves. It's how human perception functions in the world. What do you imagine her background story to be? What do you think happened to her that she feels freaked out at the possibility of being touched? How did she get to the middle of the woods with no provisions or clothes? And why would she give up her royal status? She could have dropped or buried her crown anywhere in the woods. Why wait until it drops, perhaps on purpose, perhaps by accident, or perhaps in the shadow world of the unconscious motivation? Later in the opera, we'll see just how this might happen. Mélisande agrees to accompany Golot out of the forest. What motivates her decision? Is she passively acquiescing? Are there seeds of effectual choice? Or are there no real conscious forces that drive the action? Some people say the music tells the story, but I say in this opera, more than most, the music activates you and you will fill in the blank and tell the tale that speaks to you. Give yourself over to it. In this symbolist drama, there's no history that will come back to explain it. Your imaginings is what you bring to the opera house, and it is much a dreamscape as it is a literal story. In just a very few minutes, you are drawn into that dream. The scene shifts to the castle. 6 months have passed. A letter has arrived from Golot to our other title character, his younger half-brother, Pelléas. Their mother, Geneviève, reads the letter to the old blind King Arkel. The letter explains that Golot has married Mélisande, and she was traumatized, he explains, but cannot say how. She has offered no further information, not even her age. But he wants his grandfather, blind King Arkel, to accept her. And if he does, to light the lamp on the rampart, or he will sail off to parts and ports unknown, never to be seen again. We learn that he was supposed to marry as a part of an alliance to end a long war, but no, he picks up a foreign girl by the pond and elopes. Again, here we are filling in with our own minds what's happened in the story. What kind of answer is Gounod hoping for? Is he homesick? Or is he looking for an excuse to get away? Can we really say he's married for love to a woman about whom he knows almost nothing? Is he at all in touch with what truly motivates him, or does his motivation remain unconscious? The king responds, Gounod is a widower and has always been obedient until then, so sure, he should come home. You cannot fight fate, he says. Now, it refers both to the fait accompli of the marriage, but also, as we shall soon see, the deteriorating condition of the Dark Kingdom. Back to Golot. How did that first wife die? Maybe redeeming this mystery woman is his personal kind of redemption. Also, another point about his character. Psychologically speaking, a person who is always a good and obedient prince to the king above him very often expects that kind of loyalty from those below him and can become abusive if he does not get it, even violent. We wonder, will the opera embrace this psychological insight? So, the king decided Golot can come home with his bride. After that was settled, Pelléas, Golot's half-brother, enters and has a request of his own. He wants to leave and go visiting a dying friend, but the king tells him no. His father is also sick and orders him to choose family over friends. The scene ends with Pelléas' mother, Geneviève, reminding him, light the lamp to signal his brother Gounod to come home. Now, why would Pelléas forget? Does she sense some fraternal conflict about the homecoming? Perhaps some resentment about his brother Gounod can go off hunting for half a year, and yet Pelléas cannot even visit a dying friend? Or maybe it goes deeper, a festering resentment between brothers, which is as old as the ages and as archetypal as Cain and Abel. Again, the music informs us. In the next scene, further implications of the music enter as Mélisande and Geneviève walk in the garden. More time has passed. We can tell because her hair is longer. In this production, her lengthening hair marks the passage of time. And Mélisande remarks on how dark it is in the garden and how dark and dense are the surrounding forests. Geneviève confirms how shocked she was when she first arrived, but as hard as it is to believe, she's accepted it for almost 40 years. Watch Mélisande's reaction and her manner of dress. Is Mélisande afraid of becoming another Geneviève? Is she turning into her or getting stuck? Pelléas arrives, but he does not approach the women until he's called to do so by his mother. What held him back? They discuss the ship out on the sea. Mélisande says it is the one that brought her and it is leaving. What's the chance she could actually recognize a ship at that distance in the dark? Clearly she cannot, but we get a glimpse of what's going on inside her head, perhaps confirming that she feels trapped. Literally in her mind, her ship has sailed. Geneviève goes off to watch the child Ignolde, her grandson, by Gounod's previous marriage. Now, Pelléas offers his hand to help Mélisande down the steep path. She says she cannot take it. Her hands are full of flowers. But really, what's holding her back? We can sense something between them, and this is soon confirmed. He guides her by the arm. Pelléas then says he might have to go tomorrow, and Mélisande wants to know why. Their connection seems to be starting innocently enough, but again, the music tells the story of the inner life. They themselves may be only vaguely aware. He does not want to leave her, and she does not want him to go. With this simple, or perhaps not so simple exchange, the act ends. As the music of the interlude plays, we are processing what the last exchange might mean. And in the next scene, we are a little surprised that the couple is on a walk together by themselves, and they're going to one of his favorite spots, Blind Man's Well. The music conveys both their innocence and their passion. It reminded me of dating during high school. Dating that is filled with budding friendship, longing curiosity, and raging hormones. Now, there used to be a belief that the well opened the eyes of the blind, but since the king is almost blind, people stop believing in that. Blindness symbolizes the permanent darkness that the kingdom is plunged into. And as if we were short on symbolism, the two of them note that there's a lime tree down there where the sun never shines. Mélisande gets it into her head to reach into the well, and although she cannot reach the water, her long hair falls from her head and touches it. The erotic symbolism of letting her hair down becomes almost palpable. This dropping of the hair again seems unconscious, but perhaps not unmotivated. It strongly suggests the forming of an erotic connection between them. It arouses Pelléas. How do we know? Well, of course, it's in the music, but also this feeling is supported in the libretto because Pelléas immediately associates Mélisande, how did you meet my brother Gounod again? We see the activated dynamic of the love triangle. This is the psychologically validating association he makes. The questions reveal his attraction. In his mind, he may consciously just be curious, but unconsciously, the music reveals a stronger erotic attraction. He wants to know if his brother was physically close. She replies along the same veins. Oh, he wanted to kiss me, but I didn't want to. Then what does she do? She just begins playing with her wedding ring, tossing it and catching it, and treating it lightly. As the clock tower strikes 12, whoops, down into the well it goes. Did she drop it on purpose? Again, from a genuine psychological perspective, her behavior doesn't have to be conscious to be motivated. This opera oozes with examples of this unconscious motivation that guides our behavior. In this case, playing and dropping the ring. What shall I tell Gounod, she asks Pelléas. And he answers, the truth. Now, is he talking about how she dropped the ring or the truth as to what's happening between them? The scene shifts to just a bit later when Mélisande comes home to find her husband Gounod injured in bed. At exactly noon, his horse went mad, ran into a tree, and fell on top his chest. He says somewhat prophetically, I thought my heart was torn. I suppose the symbolism can get a little heavy-handed, but not as heavy as that horse. Mélisande, who's unconscious, is clearly running the show, now starts crying. Gounod asks, has someone hurt her? No one, she replies. He persists. The king, my mother, Pelléas? She explains, it's something stronger than me. Gounod acknowledges, it is true that this castle is very old and very dark. It is very cold and very deep, and all who live in it are already old. And the countryside may seem sad too, with all these forests, all those old forests without light. He is all conciliatory and nice until he notices she's not wearing his ring. And then he goes crazy and tells her she must go off and find it, even though it's dark, and retrieve it. And furthermore, take Pelléas with you. And the two do go out. On their search, or actually their pretend search, they encounter 3 beggars. Pelléas explains that there's famine in the land, and we hear the echo of Mélisande's words that something bigger is going on. Next, in Act 3, it opens with our Rapunzel moment, the night she lets her hair all the way down. The scene radiates frustrated love. Gounod discovers the lovers, but dismisses them as children at play. As I mentioned earlier, the dark is symbolic of the unconscious instinct, both for passion and aggression. And as if to reinforce this theme, the next scene finds Gounod and Pelléas and Mélisande down in the underground of the castle, below the surface, symbolic of the power of the unconscious instincts, erotic life instincts and aggression and death instincts. Mélisande asks straight out at finding a pool of stagnant water, do you sense the smell of death rising? In the next scene, Gounod tells Pelléas that Mélisande is pregnant and she is in delicate emotional condition. Stressing her could lead to misfortune. So bottom line, avoid her, and if you do cross paths, do so without affection. At this point, Gounod has etched the lines of his own likely unconscious love triangle, competing with Pelléas for Mélisande unconsciously, while expressing conscious concern for his wife's well-being. In the next scene, we find Gounod along with his son, Ignol. We learn they don't spend much time together. By contrast, we learn that the boy has been drawn to Mélisande, with whom he spends most of his time. Gounod then presses him for details of what happens when Pelléas and Mélisande are together. Do they ever leave you alone and go off? No. Do they ever talk about me? Yes. What do they say? They say, you'll be as tall as your father. The conversation seems sufficiently innocent, but we sense that tension building in Gounod. He squeezes his son Ignol's arm with unintentional force, and it hurts him, foreshadowing Gounod's dangerous anger. Act 4 opens with a more frantic pace. Pelléas' father has recovered sufficiently to recognize Pelléas, and he tells him he has the look of death, he should get out, which, as you remember, he's been trying to do since the beginning of the opera. Now, in the next scene, King Arkel apologizes to Mélisande in an impressive aria that includes his sentiment, "You are too young and too beautiful to live already day and night under the breath of death." Guillot comes in, as angry as ever, looking for his sword. He's crazed. He cannot stand Mélisande's touch. He drags her by her hair, and then, in a dissociated moment, calms down suddenly and departs. Arkel asks if he's drunk, but Mélisande simply explains, "He does not love me anymore." The scene shifts. The boy, Isolde, is out on his own, confused about lost sheep, very symbolic. Mélisande and Pelléas meet in a dramatic affirmation of love, and they acknowledge their need to part. He invites her to come out of the shade and darkness, come into the light. She says she knows him better in the darkness. The power of their love from the beginning has been the activation of unconscious passion. They noticed Guillot, but it's too late on every front. The crescendo of the music rises. They embrace, they kiss wildly, and Guillot rushes at them from the bushes. He kills Pelléas and pursues Mélisande into the forest. His murderous rage emanated from his unconscious instinctive aggression. This dissociated state actually realistically portrays someone who could be as violent as Gounod and then confused about it later. I served as the psychiatry consultant to the State Penitentiary of New Mexico for 5 years, and I can affirm that this is the kind of dissociative states that lead to crimes of passion. Inmates describe to me just such regretted moments that ends a life and ruins so many other lives. In the final act, Mélisande has given birth and is weakened. Guillot is repentant and asks for forgiveness. She grants it and asks, well, what for? He makes her swear to tell the truth, which she does, and asks, did you love Pelléas? Yes, she says. Where is he? She has entered the dreamlike world of the dying. Are you guilty? He insists. No, she says. Nothing coupable. Not guilty. Guillot reminds himself of his previous idea. They were just children. It was all innocent play. But he cannot be sure. He laments he will die like a blind man. Light fades from the day as life drains from Mélisande's postpartum body. The darkness of the kingdom encompasses them all. Psychologically, here's a bit of a paradox. For many of us, we find a calming resolution in this unsettling tragedy. It's puzzling. The deaths of Pelléas and Mélisande were certainly tragic, and the fact that their passion had to be obscured in the dark for so long, even from themselves, this is tragic as well. But paradoxically, for each of us experiencing this opera, we can be inspired to help our personal passions to find the light of day in our lives. We have a choice that Pelléas and Mélisande did not. Next time, the Opera Insights segment continues with the story of a water nymph who makes sacrifices of her own in pursuit of love. See you then.